It's time to go over the race car and find out what sort of damage we did at Tooborac. If my editing skills and time management skills are up to scratch, this will be the last video for the year. And then I'll be back posting sometime late January, probably have a few weeks of kicking back because I've got some jobs I need to tick off. But I just got to go out to mum and dad's, throw my race car on the hoist. The main thing I want to do is just pull the rear diff back out and pull the LSD center out because I just want to get that back to Scott so he can then put it back in his diff and not worry. I don't just want it sitting in my car for months. I think the majority of the damage is just cosmetic, bar work and some rock rash over everything. But yeah, for the most part, mechanically, it's still pretty good. So we'll head out there. I'll pull the locker apart as well so you can see how the diff lock works. It's an old style 3-piece ARB one. So we'll pull that down. I'll show you how it all works. And then I've got some replacement end caps from the guys at Roadrunner Off-Road, which is super handy. And I'll, put the locker back together and chuck it back in. So let's go and get into it. All right, so we are just back the car on the hoist and we'll get into a bit of damage report before we whip this center out. Like, there's not too much mechanical problems, it's more just cosmetic stuff. So we'll start at the front. The rope, actually I'll see if I can rise it out. So we tore the outer sheath. So on this sniper line, it's got an outer sheath that protects the inner rope. And I'm glad that we had this rope there because it certainly copped a bit of a flogging on the rocks because the rocks were super abrasive. So what I might do, I think it's only like maybe 2 meters in, I might just cut it off and retie it and just lose 2 meters of the rope because I don't know, it's had a bit of a scuff up. So going around this side of the car, on the very last stage, literally near the finish box, I'll see if we can eye this up. Push the whole scrub rail in. It's nearly on the guard there. It's not too bad, but like that'll pull out pretty easy. But yeah, it just got wedged between these rocks and just like could only drive forward and it just peeled it in. So probably lucky it was there because it did save it. So it did its job. Some real good rock rash on my nice rims. Yeah, and if you're not careful, that will actually cut you. Like that is some super deep gouging in that. Moving on to the left slider. So if you watched the video, you would have seen we had to chain this down and bash it so the door would open. I think, just still open. But if you have a look underneath, it's all flattened, all punched in. Nice. It's a nice big dent there. Moving back here, like that's punched in. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's there for. They're doing their job. So like the cab itself is actually still fine. I don't even really think I put a scratch on the cab, but the bar work certainly did its job. Nasty little bit of sidewall damage. I actually only just noticed that. It's pretty deep. You can see it's even, must have hit something pretty hard. We have a look in this lower control arm. The bush is actually coming out of the steel sleeve that gets pushed into the end of the arm. So that's not the only bush that's done that. There's a heap of other control arm bushes that have flogged out. They come along the right hand side, like same thing, just massive rock rash and everything. This slider absolutely copped it. Like look at that. So it's punched up a fair bit. Even the that inner tube there is all punched in. I don't even think. So the door only just opens. I even ground that weld down so the door would slip over a bit easier, but that needs smashing back down. And yeah, that's around the outside. So obviously the diff still as bent as ever. We didn't straighten it on any rocks, unfortunately. So diff's bent, rear diff's still slightly bent. we'll throw up on the hoist and see what else we can find. The chassis is not too bad on this side. It's just got some grazings. It's not really that punched in. Like the cross member's a bit punched in. Yeah, that's folded up. So I think that's pretty previous stuff. Yeah, they've been bent before. The driver's side chassis rail, a little dent in it. That's not too bad really. Got a rock rash on the cross member. This center cross member's a bit smashed in. Anything low hanging just got absolutely smashed with rock rash. The old tie rod, she's bent up. You can see where it's been hitting on the webbing of the front diff housing. They just bend that far and then they just stay there. The front housing's copped it. Some of that was already there, but that major one, that certainly wasn't there. That's pretty big. Have a look at this in the diff brace. I crashed into a rock. It punched that in. That radius arm bush is fairly torn up. Surprisingly, they're not as bad as I thought they'd be. There's heaps more. The control arm bushes, they're all rooted at the back. This swivel hub's absolutely pissing out oil, and I need to actually check that because it's coming from a weird spot. Surprisingly, this side's still pretty dry, but yeah, this side, it's because I've driven it, but there was like oil all down the rotor onto the rim. And if you can see up in here, I've plated the back side of this panhard mount and then plated the sides down to here, and then I've got this bar that runs across onto the other side of the chassis because it's pretty common for these to break off. But she's probably a bit too solid. You can see it's all cracked up there. And if you have a look on that side, you can see that big crack there and it's peeled it all the way off. Like, yeah, that's pretty buggered. But yeah, like I said, it's mainly just, like, really is just cosmetic stuff, some bushes. Like, yeah, you know, the car needs a bit of loving after this year. Like the 3 races and we done well in all 3. And yeah, the car's copped an absolute flogging. I haven't really done that much maintenance since the first race. So yeah, that all acquires over the last 3 races, and then yeah, you get swamped in with lots of maintenance jobs. So anyway, it still drives, but obviously it just needs some love. We needed a plug to plug up the locker line. An old pressure switch. Looks funny sitting in there. I don't know when all this maintenance will occur. I've got a few ideas which I don't know, I might talk about at the end of the video. I don't know, I haven't decided if I'm going to tell you all yet, but we'll see. The main goal is for right now, I'll just whip this diff out. It shouldn't take too long, and then I just got to pull the LSD out, and I've got to give that back to Scotty, so then at least he's got it. I don't want to have it here for ages and then, you know, him wondering where it is. So I've got to get that back. I did get some locker parts off Roadrunner Off-Road to fix my old style locker that was in there. So we'll go through that. I'll actually show you. I've got to pull the locker down, so I'll show you how they work. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, I'll throw in a time lapse and we'll get this diff out. Right, well, diff's out. Not too hard of a job. I've done it a million times now. Centers still looks good. I just need the LSD to get back to Scott. Surprise, surprise. The right hand axle's twisted. Whatever. Probably twisted when I broke the left one, maybe. I'm not sure. But got to swap out this right one while I'm here. Lucky I got plenty of spare rights. All right, well, I've just stripped the diff down and got the LSD center out of it. And I found more problems. So if you can see in here, I've already marked it as broken. You can see there's 4 teeth, like the tops of the teeth sort of halfway down. Little sections of them have got cracks in it. So the pinion's pretty much buggered, which is why I've written on it so I don't get confused, which means the matching crown wheel is pretty much useless to me. It's the first real time I've ever seen that or ever even done that. I've never actually broken a diff from driving. It's always been from like broken locker or something, or an axle, the shrapnel goes through the gears and wrecks it. So it's the first time I've seen that, which is a bit of a bummer, but I do have a spare one on the shelf, which is lucky. I think I got that pretty cheap, and it is actually aftermarket gears, so yeah, I'm interested to see how long it really lasts. I don't even know, there's no brand name on it, so I don't even know what brand gear it is or how old they are. It was just, they come up cheap, a couple $100 I think for front and rear. And yeah, I ended up buying them. So I'll slap this together. But yeah, I've got to pull this locker apart first before I put it all together. And yeah, we'll get into that. So this is a old school ARB locker, an old 3-piece one. So that end cap comes off and this end comes off and you're stuck with the center cap. So there, that's what the old school 3-piece look like. You can see where we broke the axle in here. I actually got very lucky because that would still be fine to use really. If I just pulled this bearing off, machined it down any high spots, and then slipped another bearing on there. But you can see it cracked the inner race of the bearing. We're very close to throwing this back in, like very close. I think it would have lasted on the shorter slow stages, but the longer stages it probably would have yeah, fell to bits, and then it would have cost me a gear set, which whatever, cost me a gear set anyway. So yeah, that's how we end up with the LSD in there. But the downside of these lockers is ARB discontinued a lot of their stuff. So the engagement gear, the piston on the inside, and a few other things they discontinued, which is a bummer. Because if you like, yeah, destroy something on the inside, it's real hard to get them going again. Especially if you do what I done, like if you broke an axle and smash that end out properly, like the locker's pretty much useless. But luckily there are some guys that have made some of these locker bits, and you can guess who it is. The guys at Roadrunner Off-Road. So they've come up with these end caps for them, so you can get both sides. And yeah, if you break an axle and damage your locker, yeah, you can just buy these replacement end caps and get your locker going again. They did change these end caps to the 50mm ID bearing, because the old style locker is 45 ID and 50 is normal. So 50's on the normal patrol stuff. So yeah, bearings are a little bit more readily available, but that also means you have to change your seal housing. So the old school 3-piece locker had this bolt on, instead of like this floating design that just clips onto the preload nuts. And what ends up happening is it can wear little grooves in there, and then they don't seal properly. So going to a floating one, like a new style one, you can get them for the old school lockers, a 45mm one, that's what that is there. But moving to them helps heaps. But then when you move up to these Roadrunner end caps, yeah, you do have to get the new seal housing. So keep that in mind, but at least all that stuff's more readily available than this older stuff. We'll have a quick look at this side. So we pull this end cap off. There's a shim in there. So this is the side gear. So your axle goes into here, there's one on the other side, and as it sits now, it spins just like an open diff. Got spider gears in there. And this is the locking ring around the outside. So when you, we'll get into the other side, but when you put air into it, this engagement ring gets forced up and it locks this side gear to the housing. So it's got a, it's got teeth on either side. So it slips up and then yeah, makes this side gear one with the housing, which means it's all locked as one solid unit. So if we pull this out, you can see, yeah, it's just got a set of 4 spider gears in there and then 2 side gears on it. So there's a set of 6 gears in there. The old school ones have this 1-piece cross pin, where the new school one, that's open. They've just got pins, 4 pins in from either side. Yeah, it doesn't have like a one-side cross pin. You might be able to see the locking gear has this plastic piston which goes down to the other side on the back side of the seal where air gets put in. I'll quickly buzz this side off and we'll lift this off and we'll have another look in that side. So if we look here, this is your seal housing. So this copper line is the line that protrudes in the bulkhead fitting here where your air goes in. So you have air go into that, which comes out of that tiny little hole there, and it's sealed between these 2 quad ring seals. And then you can see the grooves, like the vague markings in the housing here where the quad rings sit, and then that little pinhole there is where the air goes through, and then it goes into the back of there and on this back side of this big orange seal, and it actually pushes this seal out. That seal pushes on this plastic piston hard, and then if I flip this over, that plastic piston in there is attached to the locking ring, which then slides out on these external teeth, which then slides over these internal teeth and locks it all together. So it's pretty cool design. The new style ARB is a 2-piece housing. You can only pull off the big end cap, and then all this is one unit, but it's the same concept. The seal housing's on the other side, and it doesn't have this plastic piston up the guts. It's just the seal pushes on like on the back of the engagement ring itself, and then the engagement ring has like a wave. Actually, I've got one here, wave washer under it. This wave washer, or a set of little springs. So when the seal pushes on the gear, it forces it over the side gear to lock it in. And then when you let the air off, the spring-loaded or that wave washer or the springs return the engagement gear to the open position. So a lot of guys prefer the old school 3-piece ones. They reckon they're stronger, and they do actually have they engage further on the side gear. The new style ones only engage like 3 or 4 mil, and if you're not careful, like if you crash lock it, or you dump the clutch without rolling first and locking it in, you can round the edges of the teeth off and then they jump out. But that problem with these is not so common. I've never actually had a problem with either old school or new school. Yeah, both lockers have been awesome. I prefer the new school because you can get parts, simple as that. But yeah, I do like the old school design. So either is good. The only real locker I've had problems with is a TJM. Yeah, I personally would probably never buy one again, especially in the race car. I'd never waste my time putting one in. But yeah, I do like the ARBs. It is unfortunate that the ARB stopped making some of these components. There's a big parts list and a exploded diagram of these on the ARB website, and yeah, it lists all the part numbers for everything, and then there's a third of them are discontinued or don't exist. But I'm glad that people like Roadrunner can make these end caps, because that's probably the main thing that happens. You break an axle, it blows the side cap to bits, but the rest of the locker's good. You only need a side cap, but the locker's useless because ARB don't sell them. So yeah, if you do have an old school 3-piece locker and you have this same problem, hit up the guys at Roadrunner. You'll be able to bring this locker back to life. So yeah, I just got to pop this seal out and I'll put it in the new end cap. And then I just got to put it all back together. Plenty of Loctite on these bolts. And then we'll chuck it back in the center. I will be keeping these old side plates for spares. Like if I had one of them at the event, we could have pulled the locker apart on the trailer and put it back together and still had a locker. So yeah, at least having them as spares, I should never really run into trouble. Well, I've just run out of time, so I got the locker together. I just need to Loctite and torque up the ring gear bolts, then set it up in the diff. But yeah, like I said, I ran out of time, so I'll get to that another day. Well, I've made it back in here. It's scorching hot, so I want to try to get this done this morning so I don't have to be in here all day. So we're back down to getting this done. So I just got to go around and Loctite all these and then torque them down to spec. What I do is I do up all these bolts hard up and then Loctite them one by one. So then this surface is hard up against this surface and you don't have any issues with potentially Loctite. Like if you just sat that up, Loctite the bolt and put it in, there's potential for Loctite to get between the two surfaces and then it won't fully compress and mate properly, and then the Loctite dries, or you might have run out problems on the gear or whatever. So both mating surfaces have to be perfectly clean, and yeah, I just do them all up and then one by one Loctite them. So I'll get through that. All right, so typical when you play with cars, nothing ever goes to plan. So I just had that together and I was just tightening up one side preload nut, and I was just feeling the backlash as I was going, and then I noticed there's a bit of movement in the pinion. I thought it's a bit strange, so I pulled it back out. And then I thought maybe the pinion nut was loose, so I tried to do it up and it wouldn't do up. So anyway, I undone it and I knocked the pinion out, and I found these shims in a few pieces, which is not ideal. So obviously the shims collapsed, and then yeah, it causes the pinion to not have enough preload on it and make it move. And then pulling the pinion out, I'm inspecting the teeth face here, and on one edge, I'm assuming it's probably the drive edge, it feels like it's got a sharp edge on it. So it's probably been loose for a little while, and then yeah, probably worn the pinion a little bit funny, which means it probably won't set up well. Seeing as just a race car, I might try and yeah, pull that broken diff apart and steal some shims out of that and shim this back up, and then just run it as it is. Oh, I'm glad I only paid, you know, I think it was $300 for front and rear for these 4.6s, because you know, that's a lesson in itself. If I had paid big dollars for these 4.6s and you've seen that, like essentially, yeah, it's not too bad for the race car. It doesn't do much long driving. But like if this was going in my wagon, I would not be happy. So that's why, like these days, a while back, I swore to never buy another secondhand gear set again. And I did, which is these. But like I said, they were cheap. But just another reminder, if you're going to do gear sets, just buy new gears and get them set up properly by someone. It saves you this sort of headache. Well, I've got diffs going everywhere. I've pulled apart 2 extra diffs now, trying to find shims, and they're basically the same 2 shims, which is these 2, bigger one and a smaller one, but I've managed to find, like, there's, you know, 0.1, 0.2 of a mil variance in some of them. So I've managed to cut down the shims by, like, I think it's 0.4 of a mil. We're tightening the gap, and it's pretty close. Like, I need probably another 0.1, 0.2 of a mil to get that pinion tight. And yeah, I'm really don't want to, like, I've got full diffs over there, but I don't want to be pulling them apart. So yeah, I don't know, we've got to keep thinking and try and figure something out, but we're nearly there. Well, we're back in action. So back to where we started. I found a shim that was like 0.15 smaller, and it seems to be set up pretty good. Like it's probably a bit on the firmish side, but for this car, it's perfect. So hopefully that sorts all that out. Hopefully the gear's set up good, but anyway, we'll get back to where we were. Well, I'm just throwing the dial indicator on. It's a handy little magnetic base that holds the dial indicator. They've got to be set up to like 0.15 to 0.2 mil of like backlash. And then there's a run out spec, which is whatever, I think it's 0.08 or 0.1 or something. So yeah, I'll just check the backlash. I can already feel that it's got a little tight spot in it. But because it's just going in this car, I'm gonna set it up so that tight spot is actually like on the tighter side, and then the rest of the clearances should be good. And just see how that goes. Like, it doesn't do massive amounts of, like, you know, sitting on 100k an hour for hours. It's just short, fast bursts. And I know that you can run into problem with the less clearance, can actually, yeah, squeeze the last bit of the oil out, and then it can be gear on gear, cause a lot of wear or potentially break gears. But, you know, this gear set is pretty much useless to me if I don't put it in this car. So this diff, I would actually not put this diff in my wagon. So yeah, it's pretty much useless to me other than going in this car. So we'll set it up like that and just see how long it lasts. Like, it might last years, it might last days, but it should last enough anyway. You can see it's roughly 0.15, 0.16. Anyway, I usually, yeah, we'll spin it around and check it in a few spots. So, got some new seals in there. Make sure every time you have it apart, blow air through here and clean out the line, just in case, I don't know, oil or debris or something gets in there, because if something is in there, that will feed straight into this air gap, potentially into your locker and behind the seal. But yeah, just double check all that. So it's only a matter of bending this copper pipe in line. This is a second-hand seal housing, and just like that, the job's done. So I'll just square this up a bit. Right, that is looking good. Well, finally it's done. It took way longer than I wanted it to. It's definitely not set up as good as I'd like, but anyway, it's gonna go in the car. So everything works. I had to actually make a couple adjustments like off camera to the backlash because it just, yeah, it was, the tight spots were just too tight. So anyway, I've found roughly a happy medium and then we're just gonna send it. So I'm gonna throw it in the car now and get all that done. Hopefully it's only another half an hour's work and then I'm out of here because it's too bloody hot. Now, one thing I've learned over the years, and I always do it these days, before I've even put anything on. So the air line's in and compressor's pumped up, like the locker's engaged. And that just, I'll just have that engaged the whole time I'm putting this back together. So like if you know, you put something in or you damage something, lifting the center in, you put the air on it and you just know that it's good or bad. You'd rather find out now, it's easy enough to pull it back out rather than, put it all back together, go out on the tracks and then go to use your rear locker and it doesn't work. So little hot tip for you. All right, well the car's back down on its wheels. Thankfully, probably won't be long and then the axles will be back out checking them, but whatever. I do actually have a bit of a drive planned like in the next couple of weeks, but it'll be, by the time this is uploaded, it'll be already done. So I still need to replace some control arm bushers. There's probably 4 or 5 control arm bushers I've got to replace. And I've got to fix that pan up down on the front before we go for a drive. But yeah, I'll just sort of patch it up and get it going. And yeah, just, it's only a day drive just before Christmas. So, but I'll go wrap this one up at home in my shed. Again, thanks to Roadrunner Off-Road for supplying the locker end cap. So that wraps that up. It's good just to have the car sort of sitting there. Really, I might actually just pull the swivel hub off, fix that oil leak, and then just give it a bolt check, and then it's probably actually right to drive. I was gonna really not say too much about this, but I've had a few sleepless nights and I'm sort of thinking about putting the race car cab on a new chassis and redoing all the suspension mounts. I've had a few ideas that have kept me up at night in regards to driveline upgrades, which if it all works out will be pretty sick. Yeah, and redo my coilover mounts and do some upgrades while I'm there, long arms in the front and rear, change the sway bar location, and just redo things that you only really know you want to redo if you've built the car. So like you sort of need to build the car to whatever you think it needs to be built to, use it, and then it's like, righto, I'd change this, 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 and this. So I know I said I'd never build another car again, but I'm sort of just want to do that to get all these ideas out of my head, because I think I can improve the car vastly just with some, yeah, suspension changes and like location of stuff on the back, tighten it up, move all the stuff in front of the diff and, try and cut some weight off it. And yeah, the driveline upgrade, especially the front, will be pretty sick if it goes ahead. But that also allows me to, like, I was thinking on the back to do like a race trim setup. Not that, I'm not 100% sure if I'll actually race the car again. I might race the Wild Dog, the Bindaree, like the big one, which is really, it's only 15 minutes down the road or 20 minutes down the road. Like I might race that one again, but I'm not like massively motivated to go race it at the moment. And I definitely will not be racing in the year 2023. I've pulled the pin on that. I will not be racing. It sort of opens the door a little bit to, I want to mount like the fuel tank, the batteries, and some other stuff, mount it all to the chassis, and then potentially actually have a tray that I can bolt on. So then I could actually take it camping and whatever, maybe a tray and canopy would be pretty sick. And then yeah, if I do want to race it again, like I want to literally have nothing on the back, like some rubber, maybe some rubber mud guards or something, just to abide by the rules. I think the tires have to be 70% covered from a bird's eye view from memory. So like minimal coverage on the tires. Yeah, nothing past the rear diff, and just like, yeah, have bare minimum on the back to save weight and just to save, I don't know, smashing all the stuff up on the back. And then I'll just have some integrated tray mounts on the back where I can literally just bolt the tray on and I can throw all the camping gear and that on. So that's what I'm thinking. I don't want to redo the cab because redoing the cab is like the biggest job. it's like, if I redo the cab, then I definitely won't be racing it again, because I wouldn't put a spec roll cage in it. I'll just put like an old spec roll cage in it. Because then, yeah, potentially engineered is on the cards, where with a new spec roll cage, it's like impossible to engineer. So that's why I don't want to build a new cab. But at least if I've got a chassis, and if I've got the cab, it's literally just bolted on, still use all my radiator lines, motor, gearbox, you know, driveline bits, everything just bolts on, and then it's just a matter of pretty much making all the bar work again. Which, yeah, like I said, opens the door to changing a few things, like moving my winch probably 20 or 30 mil out, so it gets that little bit more room between the cooler and the winch, and then I can space the cooler out and give it more room between the motor. But that's just a couple ideas. I've got a lot more ideas that I'm not going to elaborate on now. But like I said, the driveline one will be pretty sick if it happens. I'm actually going to get the ball rolling on that now, like real soon, because the idea just doesn't leave my head. So I just got to make a start on it to see if it's possible. But stay tuned for all that. What I really want to know is, I've got, like, this wagon only needs a little bit of work, but that's pretty much fine. But I've got the new GQ here, which I haven't really told you what I'm doing with that yet, but maybe we'll get to that. And then I've got the Skyline. So I want to put it to you guys, I don't know, message me or drop it in the comments. What do you want me to see me do first? Like, would you rather me do a bit to this wagon? Do you want me to start the Skyline build, or should I do like a race car 2.0? There'd be like way more in the race car, a lot of fab work, suspension stuff, and whatever else. So let me know what you think about that. I'm sort of leaning towards the race car as much as I don't really want to. I've just, yeah, these ideas, I'm just one of them people, I get ideas in my head and then nothing else matters, and I'm gonna do that idea. So that's where I'm at. So we'll leave it on that note. Thanks for hanging around this year. Thanks to all the new subscribers, and thanks to all the returning subscribers that have been hanging around. It's been a big year of racing content. There was a little bit of hit and miss content throughout the year, but I've just been super busy this year. But keep an eye for next year. Like I said, there's either 1 or 2 or 3 builds we've got to get stuck into next year. Hopefully right here in this shed is the plan. I'm hoping over Christmas I can knuckle down and get some stuff done in here and set it up. So then, yeah, you know, sort of the start of next year, we can start doing some builds in here. And I am actually hoping to get up to New South Wales. There's a couple of plans in place to try and get up there for a full drive in the wagon. And then also I'm teetering with the idea of going down to Tassie. So there's a couple of things in place about that as well. So stay tuned for all that. It's going to be a pretty big year next year. I'm going to continue to work my butt off. I'll be setting up a website. We'll have some stuff like that coming up. So it's going to be another big year. So keep an eye out for all that. I appreciate the support. Have a good Chrissy and New Year's, and I'll see you in the new year.